for me, all started 94. My brother was here in the U.S. For the first time, and I heard a lot of good things. I was 14 years old, and you think about you live in a ranch. I live in a ranch, and um, you, you never go outside the ranch. So to me, it was unheard. I want to go to the United States. So I make the journey, and a year later, I talked to my grandpa. We come from a farm. The main living over there is we do tiles for a living. So it's a hard work. And it's a decent work. But you knew if you wanted to succeed in life, you got to do something different. And I told my grandpa, say, I want to go to the U.S. And he supported me. He was one of those that said, like, yeah, you go for it. And so we make the journey. I was 15 by the time I came here, and I came with another gentleman, same age, same town. We both make that journey. Got $20. It was about $50 in my pocket when I came to the U.S. And I sleep in somebody else's floor for 6 months. That was rough. That was really rough. And but I find a job right away from day one. And it was kind of silly because we went to Goodwill. That was the first store I went to buy a couple clothes, and I was like, I find this pants for it was like 50 cents, back in the days, and there were black jeans, and I went and do laundry. I never done laundry in my life. My grandma my grandma did the laundry for me all the time, and I bleached it. That was my only good jeans, and I put bleach on the jeans. And you get to think about this kind of stuff in the back, and you learn by making mistakes. I find out that early in life that if you make a mistake, if you fix it, then you're not going to make the same mistake. So that was a gene moment for me. I know that if you got clothes, don't put any bleach. And I started working for restaurants, at age of 15, it was a Greek restaurant. The first restaurant I worked. They make a lot of potatoes, a lot of hash browns from scratch. That kind of reminds me how I grew up with my grandma. My grandma always baked these chili rellenos, and I always beating the eggs for her because she said the fluffy the better. The fluffier the better. And I always take to my side, like I'm like doing this and all the time. But I remember that very clear because it's a memory that I have with my grandma. That she was cooking and I was there talking to her. And sometimes it was just about the day, about school, how I don't like school, or, like it kind of sucks, all that kind of stuff. But it's a memory that I will never forget. Even I think if I'm 100 years old, if I make to 100, that's one of the few memories that I will always remember. And I take a risk at age of 18. And from that point, I always been taking risks, and that's how I live by it, by taking a risk to improve myself, my life, wherever that is. And so I think it was like 97 when I came to Iowa, and I kind of fell in love with Iowa. I was living in Chicago. Chicago's a big city, and I didn't feel comfortable. So I came to Iowa. It kind of reminds me of home. The corn, the cows, the whole thing. The whole ranch aspect, and the people were really nice. So I feel like home from that point. And from that point, I worked very hard, every day, tried to learn English. I got to school, work at the same time. And then a few years later, I met my wife. We've been married, 23 years now. She was born here in Iowa, and she don't want to go anywhere. We had the opportunity to go to like different places, back to Mexico, work for a big company over there, and then, go to Dubai, things like that. But one thing that she told me, she was really clear, she said, I want our kids to have what I have, that family, I want the grandparents to know their grandsons and granddaughter and all that. So that was, many, many years later. So I decided, okay, if I want to do something on my own, I think where I was working, I was right there. Like, I can't go any higher, because the only way to go higher is to move out of the state or out of the country or things like that. So while I was in Mexico, almost 10 years, no, 9 years ago, I was working, but then I spent a lot of time in Mexico City, on the streets of Mexico City, and I see the people over there like making tacos on the street and making all these, and I go, this is how I know how to do this. So I came back from Mexico and I told my wife, you know what, we're gonna open a food truck. She goes like, you what? I was kind of scary in the beginning, so we opened our food. So I bought a food truck. That's it. Like, it was just a plain UPS truck. There was nothing on it. I got out the whole thing. I started working on the food truck. I put the panel, the electrical. I make a lot of mistakes along the way. I make a window that it was too small. I redid that freaking window for like 4 times. Now finally we got it, and then it was not perfect, but I knew if I put the work, it was going to be eventually perfect. And I worked the food truck about 3 years part time. So I was still working, and then doing the truck part time. And the only reason I did that, it was because I want to give a little peace of mind to my wife. She's always the planner. She would like to plan around, and I'm more like, let's do it right now. But I know she was it was going to be difficult, like, quit a job with all these benefits and all that, and just go all for it. And out of respect, I go, you know what, I was working part-time and restaurants, and then working the truck. And that was probably one of the best decisions that I had, because my wife had a peace of mind. We were still printing money, and we were good. And then, you see what every day what you put in. I was looking, our first sales on the food truck was $120. I was like, you go, oh my God. I was like, I can't believe it. And you left a job that you were making $80,000 plus, for $150, and you just spend $30,000, and you get yourself on that. And it come to my mind, am I going to make it? And I just went for it. Through time, that proved that it was the right decision, because $100 turned to 200, 200 turned to 600, and so far and so far. By year 2, our food truck working a part time, we double ourselves. And now I knew I had something good, but I still don't want to go all the way in, because not because of my wife, but I want to ensure her that we were going to be okay. By year 3, we double ourselves again, and that's what I tell my wife. We're going to go all for it. And she was very supportive already, like, yeah, no, I believe it. And then COVID hit. That's when COVID hit. And I had this plan already from the food truck. I mean, we were gonna do March maintenance and downtown. I mean, they call it off, and that's it. And while that happening, is everything was closing, and I decided at that point that I was gonna do a part-time job on the weekends. Like, I was delivering boxes for FedEx on the weekends. Like, I was running every day. It was, but I decided that. And then the neighborhood started opening, and there was a high demand for food trucks. Uh, then you get all the stimulus package just like anybody else. But I decided, I was going to put the money away for a rainy day. You never know when you have a rainy day. So uh, uh, I was getting called for a lot of neighborhoods, and we were like, from that point, we just like explode. Um, and I didn't stop because I didn't know what's going to happen the next day, to be honest. So I work every day. Somebody called me for a job for lunch, and then we did dinners at neighborhoods. The next day we were working 7 days a week, nonstop. And towards the end of the year, our food truck broke down because we were going to go all year, even in the winter, and it broke down. And that's when I started looking around, and we find the taqueria for the first time. We saw the building. I saw the building that day, and I called the number, and I'm not sure if this is for sale. I mean, for listing, but can you give me more information? So the guy met with me, and I thought it was perfect for the idea that we have. So I commit that day right away. I didn't even ask my wife. I went for it. Later on, I kind of regretted because I should have asked my wife first. But I just went with my gut, and I think it was the right move. And I did that, and we opened Flame Cantina. I mean taqueria, and now we had a truck that was doing really well. Our restaurant was doing good, so now we have employees. Learn that it was interesting for us. So we hire people to kind of help us do the truck and also the employees. And then I opened the other restaurant, Cantina in Ankeny, and kind of the same story followed through. We did the same idea. The pandemic kind of teaches us to think outside the box, and from that point, I think we grow as a company, as a business, every year 100%, and we've been doing it every year. And, just last year we opened Roast 95, and we did close one restaurant last year. That was another decision that I had to make. It's like, is it working, And early in life, I learned from my mistakes. It's like, dude, that's a mistake. Let's focus on what we have, and we redo something in the future. But the most important lesson is that I wanted to keep away is, don't stuck in the past. Keep moving for it. Like the pants. Let's go back to the pants. The pants were, yes, it was a mistake me putting bleach, but I learned from that, and now I'm closing a restaurant. I could have probably put more energy and more things and make it work, but in what cost? It's just like trying to put a little pin on your pants, which a lot of Mexicans do. Sometimes they put their pants and they soak it on water. It's not the same. It's not the same. So those are decisions that I make in life. I do it to benefit the people who work for me, and then also my family. And I really like it. I enjoy it. I enjoy cooking because, once again, it reminds me about memories. The cooking aspect or the food, just the food in general, for me is creating memories that they're gonna last forever. And that's one of our motto here. We want to create memories so people can laugh and remember. I think the sad days and bad days and good days come around cooking. I can tell you a story about a couple of different ones. My great grandma, that I was probably 6 years old. She made these eggs for us, and it was It was probably the best eggs I ever had, but they were very simple. They were just eggs and chile colorado, you know. So that's it. And I remember that. My grandma used to make, like I said, the chile rellenos, and I did that. But now let's rewind back, you know. I, I don't cook as much for my kids. My wife does a lot of the cooking. But we do have that conversation around about how's their day. We fight a lot. You know, sometimes we laugh a lot, you know, but it's revolving food. My brother, I think, was one of the one. He was like my father figure. You know, I grew up with my grandpa. I never knew my dad, so my brother, which he was older, uh, he's the one who teach me how to drive, and um, he already passed away. He passed away from cancer, you know, and when when I was in Mexico, that's before we opened our restaurants. You know, we do a food truck. I was lucky enough to work for a company that took me to work in Mexico, and I was there for 6 months. But every 2 weeks, I get to see my brother. You know, like my father figure here, and we make pizza because that was one of his favorite things. You know, pizza, and he likes some Chinese and different stuff, but. He was always very humble. He couldn't work anymore. He was worried about his family. He's really sick, but I can see when I call him and say, you know, let's make something tonight. You know, let's bring grandma, your brother, you know, the aunts, everybody. And we always go to Lola. That's another one of my aunts who live in Mexico, and we sit down around the fire and we make pizza, we make whatever the meal was. And I can see that smile, you know, he was talking to us. Nobody was worried about being sick. You know, he was, in a way, in a way, enjoy it. So to me, that was important. And that's what food means for us. You know, create a memory, whether it's good or bad, you know. And as a group, that's what we wanted to accomplish. You know, I want to accomplish memories like that, you know. And I enjoy the cooking, and I love the process from opening a business to see something like this. And if I can share something a little with them, you know, or some, you know, I got a lot of people that teach me along the way to go the right way. If I can share that and somebody can learn from my story, then, you know, then that's a win in my book.